They called her Exile, a shadow with amber eyes, drinking away memories in a dim-lit bar on the edge of the galaxy. The hum of distant hyperdrives barely masked the loneliness that clung to her fur. But when a pilot's daughter, eyes full of hope and more than a little fear, asked, "Can you be my new mom?" everything changed violently. Secrets, regrets, and survival stitched their fates tighter than stars in a nebula. The bar was called the Last Roar, perched precariously on the rusty edge of the planet Ganyra VI, where the neon flickered like dying fireflies in a suffocating night. Steam hissed from fractured pipes as oily fingers of smoke curled into the stale, sweet scent of fermented synthale. Here, in this backwater outpost forgotten by the Republic, an exiled cat alien named Sila nursed her drink, the amber liquid catching the weak light like captured sunlight through stained glass. Her fur, a mosaic of dark stripes and soft ochre, lay damp from the mist outside the grimy window. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room with an almost mechanical wariness, as if expecting ghosts to rise from the shadows. The Last Roar was more than a dive. It was a refuge for the lost and damned, a place where secrets brewed stronger than the drinks. Sila's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the glass. Years ago, she had been a warrior guardian of ancient relics and forgotten magics, a protector of starways veined with danger and deception. Now she was an exile, stripped of honor, branded a fugitive by a power hungry for control. Her heart ached with loneliness, the weight of departure pressing like iron claws on her ribs. Between the droning hum of antiquated holoscreens and the murmur of broken promises, she felt the space around her closing like the jaws of a trap. That was when the door hissed open, and a small figure entered, barely 10 cycles old, yet with eyes too wide and too determined, a pilot's daughter named Miri, scuffed boots and all. Her human heritage was a stark contrast to Sila's feline grace, but the same scars marked her face: loss, hope, and resilience. Miri's gaze locked onto Sila with a raw honesty that cut through the haze of the bar's ailments. "Can you be my new mom?" she asked, voice trembling yet steady. The question shattered the silence, a paradox wrapped in innocence, pulling at Sila's fractured spirit. She looked away, heart skipping like a displaced star, caught between the shadows of past betrayals and the shimmer of uncertain futures. The bar's cracked holoscreen flickered, displaying alerts of starship pursuits and political upheaval beyond Ganyra's orbitruths nobody in this hole wanted to face. But here, now, this child with her desperate hope had become the gravity pulling Sila out of exile. And yet, danger lurked close, whispers of a hunter's return and a secret weapon buried deep beneath the planet's crust. Sila's refusal felt like a death sentence, but acceptance might tear apart what little peace remained. Her weary soul braced for a fight, not just for survival, but for a family broken by space and time. Would she find redemption or become lost among the stars? The Last Roar trembled with the echoes of fate's cruel design, and the first choice lay heavy in the smoky air. Sila's claws retracted beneath the worn fabric of her coat as she studied. Miri, in the muted light, the child's small frame trembling with a courage that belied her years. The bar's murmur dulled into a quiet hum, like the universe itself was waiting. The girl's plea hung between them, fragile but undeniable. "I lost my mother. I lost my ship. Please, I don't want to be alone." There was a weight in Miri's voice that twisted Sila's own tangled past like a blade through thick fur. The ex-warrior had spent years haunted by the ruins of battles lost and the faces of kin betrayed. She wanted only silence, solitude, and the numbness that a well-aged dram could bring. Yet this child, a spark flickering amidst cold embers, was stirring memories long buried. Sila finally spoke, her voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "Why me?" she asked, not trusting the softness beneath her gruff tone. Miri's eyes glistened. Because you're strong. Because I've seen you fight for others, even when no one else cared. Because you don't run from what matters. Outside, the bar's neon sign flickered erratically, casting their shadows onto metallic plaques dented by years of neglect. The hum of the city's restless machinery throbbed in tandem with Sila's conflicted heartbeat. She knew the cost of accepting this plea. Exposure. The enemies that stripped her of status, haunted her steps across systems, would have no mercy if they found her linked to a pilot's Daterra girl carrying secrets of rebellions and star routes worth dying for. But refusal meant condemning Miri to the cold void of a universe, indifferent to orphaned hope. Sila closed her eyes and inhaled the acrid scent of rust and synth alcohol. The fight within her was no longer about weapons or spells, but about forging something harder. Trust. Her fingers brushed the small hand that reached across the scarred table, tentative but unwavering. "You'll need more than courage," Sila murmured, shifting as a sudden tremor shook the Baron echo of distant starship engines far too close for comfort. Eyes snapped to the doorway as figures cloaked in patrol gear entered, scanning the patrons with a chilling precision. Sila recognized them instantly agents of the Spire Syndicate, the merciless enforcers who had branded her an outlaw and hunted her through 5-star systems. She exchanged a brief look with Miri, whose face set like steel. The exiled protector's instincts surged. "We don't have long," she whispered, rising with feline grace, despite an ache that throbbed in her limbs. The bar's patrons melted into shadow, the syndicate closing in like vultures circling a wounded beast. Sila's mind raced. Escape was imperative, but carrying Miri through the perilous underrun corridors of Ganyra VI was a dangerous gamble. Stepping into the neon-bleached alley, the cold bite of the night air cut through her fur, sharpening senses dulled by solitude. Miri tracked her every move, silent but steady, ready to follow without question. The chase began not just over space, but over trust, survival, and forging a family shattered by past betrayals. The streets echoed with the relentless rhythm of pursuers, and Sila's past dark, violent, and unyielding rose like a tempest threatening to engulf them both. In the distant skyline, an old starship flickered alive, a ghost from history waiting to become their only refuge if they could reach it alive. The fragile promise of a new bond now lay under fire, and the fight to protect a child's hope would force Sila to confront demons she long thought dead. Night deepened over Ganyra VI as Sila and Miri darted through the tangled maze of neon-lit alleys and forgotten tech ruins. The city's hum transformed into a cacophony of sirens, engines, and distant explosion sings of an underworld rising beneath the facade of decayed peace. Sila's heart pounded as she led Miri toward an abandoned shipyard, the only place their pursuers might not expect refuge for a ghost like her. Each breath fogged in the cold, metallic air, crystals of frost clinging to her whiskered muzzle. Miri's steps struggled to keep pace, but her resolve never wavered. "We'll make it," Sila promised, though the sting of doubt bit sharper than the chill. The past lay behind her, a shadowed echo of battles lost and comrades forsaken. But carrying this child on her path meant more than survival. It meant redemption could still flicker in even the darkest corners of space. They reached the rusting hull of the Whisperhawk, a battered freighter rumored to have been part of a forgotten fleet embroiled in a lost war for freedom against the Praxis Dominion. The ship's paint was peeling, its surface scarred by time and neglect. Yet it carried the ancient tech and raw power that once made it a ghost of war in the outer rims. Sila pried open the access hatch, the groan of metal a painful reminder of old wounds physical and emotional. Within, the dim glow of emergency lights flickered sporadically, casting long shadows down narrow corridors lined with dead consoles and tangled wires. Miri stepped inside, awe mingling with exhaustion as she took in the vessel's hollow silence. "How did you find this?" she whispered, eyes wide beneath her messy hair. Sila's amber gaze flicked toward the control console. It was more than a sanctuary. It was home once. I might still be able to get it running enough to get off this rock. The seconds stretched as Sila's skilled hands moved over ancient panels, coaxing sparks from dead circuits. A quiet symphony of forgotten tech coming alive again. But danger was closing fast. The Spire Syndicate's relentless search parties had broken through perimeter defenses, using drones with tracking protocols tailored for Sila's biosignature. Over the comm channel crackled a harsh Voicea Syndicate enforcer, known only as Karina Shadow from Sila's past, with a grudge sharpened by years of grueling war games and failures. You can run, Cat, but you can't hide. Hand over the child, and maybe the pain ends. Sila's jaw clenched, claws extending involuntarily. Miri stood close, trembling yet defiant. You won't touch her, Sila growled, stepping protectively before Miri. The Whisperhawk shuddered as systems reluctantly flickered to life-eve. Hum of engines coughed and roared, forcing metal plates to vibrate. Hope sparked briefly, like a distant star breaking through thick nebula clouds. But as sensors detected incoming transports, boarding pods launched from the skies, the realization hit. Their only chance was to fight their way out or be buried beneath the cold dust of Ganyra, the sixth forever. Sila's past and present collided in a furious blend of pain and purpose. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting to become the new family Miri, so desperately needed fierce protector, the shard of light in an unyielding darkness. As the boarding ramps hissed open and shadowed figures swarmed the deck, the air thickened with tension, and the battle for lives and souls began anew. The claustrophobic corridors of the Whisperhawk roared with the clash of metal and the sharp crackle of energy weapons as Sila moved like a phantom warfierce, precise, each movement a blend of grace and lethal intent. Miri followed, clutching a compact pulse blaster scavenged from the ship's armory, hands shaking but determined. The ship's stale recycled air mingled with the acrid scent of burning circuits and gunpowder, filling every breath with adrenaline and fear. Their pursuers were relentless, syndicate mercenaries trained to hunt ghosts like Sila, but the exiled cat alien was an expert at turning shadows into weapons. Claws raked through armor, muscles tensed with years of experience, surviving beyond the edge of law and mercy. Miri ducked behind a fractured bulkhead, eyes wide as a mercenary's pulse rifle, fired mere meters away bullets, pinging off corroded plating. Keep moving, Sila urged, voice low but urgent. Stay close, or you won't last the next minute. The desperate dance through the starship's labyrinthine holds tested every shred of their courage and wit. Miri stumbled, breath catching as a mercenary rounded the corner, blade raised. Sila intervened, her reflexes honed in countless battles, igniting in a brilliant flash as she disarmed the attacker and sent him sprawling into a wall. Behind them, the warning klaxons blared power reserves, dwindling fast as the Whisperhawk struggled to maintain systems. The ship's II, a flickering holographic cat spirit named Arco, materialized beside Sila with a worried flicker. Critical systems failing. Limited time before shutdown. Sila gritted her teeth. Their only hope was to reach the emergency escape pods buried deep in the aft section's lender capsules, capable of a risky jump through the planet's chaotic orbit to the nearest outpost. But the path was heavily fortified. The Syndicate had anticipated their moves. As they slipped through shadows and vents, Miri's breathing faltered at her youthful exhaustion, clashing against an iron core forged by loss. I'm scared, she admitted softly. Sila's amber eyes softened, and for the first time since Exile, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Fear is the fire that sharpens your claws. You're stronger than you know. A brief smile flickered on Miri's lips, and their bond solidified like the alloy that once forged interstellar swords. But then came the crushing sound of heavy boots, a squad of mercenaries blocking their final corridor. Trapped, with no retreat aside from charging a badly damaged lift shaft, the air grew thick with tension as the Syndicate's captain, a towering human named Varlik, stepped forward, malicious grin illuminated by harsh electrical panels. "Hand her over, Exile, and maybe we keep you breathing." Sila's gaze locked onto Miri, a silent promise burning unbreakable. Not a chance. With a roar of defiance she charged, claws shredding through a chest plate, turning the corridor into a battleground between survival and annihilation. The first surge of battle swallowed them whole, yet the ultimate escape was still beyond the horizon's pods. Freedom, and a future fraught with peril but pregnant with hope. As the clash intensified, they fused to their next desperate gambit Sparkadone that might either save them or consign them to silent oblivion. The sharp clang of metal against metal echoed inside the narrow corridor as Sila fought with cold precision, each strike a whisper of ancient martial discipline fused with raw instinct. Miri, heart pounding fiercely, scrambled behind their battered barricade, clutching the pulse blaster with trembling hands that refused to betray her growing strength. Around them, sparks flew, an alarmed screamed a nightmarish symphony against the backdrop of crumbling tech and mounting desperation. Varlik, towering above the fray, was relentless, his taunts cutting deeper than blades. Yet Sila held the line, a living storm on the edge of collapse. In a wild twist, Miri shouted, "The vent this way," pointing to a narrow maintenance shaft, barely wide enough for a small body. Sila hesitated, knowing the risk. The shaft's labyrinth was a death trap for anyone unversed, but it offered the only chance to outflank their enemies. Together, they squeezed into the suffocating space, bodies scraping cold metal, lungs burning in the oxygen-starved crawl. Time slowed to aching slowness as mercenaries above banged on the vent covers, voices snarling like predators denied their prey. The shadows pressed in, but Sila's mind sharpened to a razor edge, calculating, adapting, protecting the fragile life beside her. Emerging near the escape pod bay, they grabbed 2 capsules, sealing themselves into cold, claustrophobic shells designed for desperate leaps into darkness. The minutes to launch felt like eternities, each breath heavier than the last. Sila glanced at Miri, who met her gaze with a fearless spark amidst trembling nerves. "You saved me," the girl whispered, the weight of those words sinking deep into Sila's guarded heart. But salvation was not assured. The Spire Syndicate's ships closed in, dark silhouettes against the stars, their ominous guns fixated on the Whisperhawk Asterisk's last stand. Sila keyed the launch sequence, fingers steady despite the storm raging around them. As the escape pods ejected, jolted by kinetic blasts from pursuit, Sila's mind replayed the harsh lessons of loss and survival. Family was forged in moments of vulnerability, not perfect beginnings. Their pod hurtled through the turbulent atmosphere, shaking violently, the planet's fiery storms battering their shield's fragile defenses. Through the viewport, the distant glow of Ganyra VI's core flickered a reminder of all they left behind. Miri clung to Sila as the pod shuddered violently, systems faltering, but determination burning like a star undimmed. Then, a violent tremor, a surge of energy unfamiliar, yet sinister. Sila's senses screamed warning. Something else was chasing them, something tied to an ancient secret buried beneath the planet's surface, a secret powerful enough to topple empires. The pods pierced a narrow gap in the clouds, racing towards a tiny outpost clinging to the asteroid belt. As they descended, Sila's grip tightened on Miri's small hand, a silent vow that whatever waited on the horizon, they would face it together. But questions hung heavy. Would their fragile new bond withstand the storm ahead, or would the shadows of the past devour them whole? The outpost's neon lights flickered welcoming a warning as the pod doors hissed open to a world where trust was as rare as peace. The next chapter awaited, a test of hearts and steel, as families were made not by blood, but by fire. The pod's hatch hissed open to the cold, sterile glow of the asteroid outpost's docking bay, the air tinged with the sharp tang of ionized circuits and recycled oxygen. Sila stepped out first, muscles coiled but weary, eyes scanning the dim corridors carved from raw rock and metal. Miri followed close, now steadier, eyes wide with cautious wonder beneath the flickering hololights. They moved through narrow hallways lined with crates stamped from forgotten trade guilds and faded warning signs. The outpost was a ghost townseland, except for the distant echo of machinery and the hum of life, support systems struggling against the void. Outside, giant telescopes and radar arrays dangled from skeletal supports, quietly watching the stars like long-forgotten sentinels. Their refuge was fragile, a last sentinel against both the darkness of space and the shadows chasing them. Yet safety was an illusion. Sila's gut tightened as soft footsteps echoed from behind crates, voices whispered in an unknown tongue that rattled memories deep within her. They were not alone. Emerging from the shadows was a tall figure of the alien cat girl Kilara, her fur a sleek midnight blue streaked with silver, eyes glowing faintly in the artificial light. She was a hunter of secrets, once a rival within the ancient order Sila had abandoned, now an enforcer for forces far darker. "I thought you hid better," Kilara purred, voice low and carrying a dangerous edge. The tension rippled, a knife slicing through unspoken history. Sila stiffened but stood her ground, shielding Miri with a protectiveness born from nights under cold stars and broken vows. Kilara's presence meant the Order's long shadow still stretched across the galaxy. Their secret arcane technology, buried beneath Ganyra VI, was no longer just a rumor. It was a weapon, a power too devastating for any one faction to hold. And the child with Miri's bloodline was the key. Their destinies intertwined like twin stars, spiraling toward an inevitable collision. Words were weapons, and every whisper held threats. Sila's eyes locked with Kilara's, the silence heavy with years of rivalry and regret. "This ends now," Sila said quietly, moving to shield Miri's small body behind her own. Then the walls shut away a seismic pulse from below the asteroid, the dormant power beneath Ganyra VI awakening at last. Kilara's eyes narrowed as alarms blared through the station, red lights flooding every corridor. Something ancient stirred, a force neither exile nor hunter could control alone. Reluctantly, Sila and Kilara exchanged a brief note of fragile truce. The child's whispered plea haunted the cracks around them. "Will you be my new mom?" In that fraught moment, Sila realized family wasn't just about protection. It was trust forged in fire, fierce and unyielding. Together, they faced the oncoming storming alliance uncertain yet necessary, as the abyss loomed ever closer. There would be betrayals, sacrifices, and battles that stretched beyond the stars. But for the first time in cycles, Sila felt the fragile heartbeat of hope, steady and defiant. In the cold shadow of the outpost, a new family took shape, forged not by blood, but by the shared struggle for survival and love. Their fight was only just beginning.